This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
Well, Cam, I got to tell you something. We got to get rid of that billboard there, Chad, for KSDT. There we go. I'm going to create a farmer segment, okay?
Don't need to lean over here.
Chad brought it back or something, Chad?
I was like, I definitely appreciate all the KSDT
go to the left here.
Branding, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure they appreciate it too. Shout out KSDT.
Yes,
CPA.
they're getting extra. All right. So I'm going to create a segment. What the hell is going on here? I'm going to create a segment.
I'll just do it right here, just in case.
Where we're going to have overalls on and straw hats, you and me, and we're going to call it the Farmer Greer segment.
Okay.
Because the dude is all about low-hanging fruit. And that's all he's picking all day, baby. You know, when you hear the Dolphins are interested, this is what I kind of told everybody about Dalvin Cook, about Jonathan Taylor. Yeah, sure, they're interested, but they're interested because they just want to not pay you much. Oh, yeah, you want to trade Jalen Ramsey? Well, we'll give you a third rounder if you want. A pick swap. And I know he's had his maturity issues and all of that, but the dimension you're adding, the talent you're adding for a pick swap, brother, this is low-hanging fruit on top of low-hanging fruit. God.
Right. Yeah, it's the quintessential buy low, high risk, high reward. He's Chris Greer has done this throughout his career. And the reality is you do these things maybe 9, if you do these things 10 times, 8 out of 9 times, 8 or 9 times, it's probably not going to work, right? You think about some of the situations that happened in the past, Mark Walden, Robert Kimdichie, who else was a buy low candidate they brought in? Isaiah Wilson. A lot of these guys, they didn't cost a lot of money. They were a waiver claim or a few dollars here or there, or a 7th round pick 3 years from now, right? And it does not work. But your hope is maybe one works. Maybe one works, and it doesn't cost me that much. And I just tweeted about this a little bit ago. From the Dolphins' perspective, I know fans are going to be like, why is the need, right? You lose Eric Ezukanma. He's going to be out for a significant amount of time. They hope to get him back this year, but no guarantee. He's got a neck injury. You lose River Craycraft's already on IR. He's going to miss at least a month, maybe longer. And so your depth is tapped into. And so this is more a thought of, hey, if Claypool can come in and be our 4th or 5th receiver, if we can get his effort up, because that was the issue in Chicago at the end, his effort, if we can get him to commit and want to be here, then we get a guy that the Bears thought less than a year ago we should trade our 2nd round pick, our 33rd overall selection for. And
he's super talented, bro.
Worst case scenario, I may miss 20 spots in the 7th round 2 years from now in the draft. And so I get it. There's going to be some people say why, but to me, there's very little risk here. And Claypool's a guy who knows, in 3 or 4 weeks when he learns the offense, maybe you see Mike McDaniel using him in some of those Eric Ezukanma gadget roles as like your 4th or 5th receiver.
Well, as somebody just mentioned, you don't really have a jump ball guy.
Yep.
This is a jump ball guy here, bro. This is like, he is exceptional. He's
your top 2 receivers are under 6 feet, so you get a big receiver.
You get a big receiver, and listen, that's the amazing part about watching what happened a couple of weeks ago with the Chargers. You've got a ginormous quarterback with a ginormous set of wide receivers, including a giraffe in the middle of the field named Parham. And then they're playing against an Oompa Loompa with Oompa Loompa receivers. And they're out. And so all of a sudden now Tua has a big receiver now he can find downfield. That's a huge get for him. And instead of having to drop things in so perfectly, he can now throw it up higher. And remember the game against Baltimore that he threw to Gesicki up in the air in the middle of the end zone, right? And that's the kind of throw he cannot make with any of his guys. Here comes Chase Claypool. Now you've got a kind of guy that can high point, footballs. So you've added a dimension to your offense that you really did not have. Not even with Ezukanma, because he doesn't bring that kind of experience.
Absolutely. He's a 6'4" receiver. Now I'm going to tell you this. There's a good chance this does not work out. Like Chase Claypool does not have a lot of rave reviews around the league, talking to people around the league. There's not a lot of Claypool fans given what he had done in Chicago. So I'm going to preface this and say, I'm not going to pretend like Chase Claypool is going to have 700 yards over these next, 8 games. Everybody's going to be like, this is amazing. Fine. But I get it.
I got a big
understand it and why he could find a role in this offense if all goes well. Given what the cost was, low cost, he only has this year left on his contract and it's not guaranteed. So if for whatever reason you get him for 3 or 4 weeks, dude's not working, dude's not doing anything, just cut bait, just move on. You didn't lose a ton. But best case scenario, he really wants to play in Miami. And I tweeted a video, which I'm going to put on my timeline if followers want to find it, a year ago, where Chase Claypool was a Steeler at the time after the Dolphins beat the Steelers. I watched Chase Claypool go from his other end zone all the way to the Dolphins' other side of the end zone to find Tua after the game and give him a hug. I thought it was interesting. I didn't really know the context, but I thought it was interesting. To me, that shows either he has a clear respect for Tua and or he has a value being there. And so I thought that was noteworthy, it's particularly that in the game segment. And now a year later, they're teammates. And so you're right. Big receiver, 6'4". He could be a guy using gadgets, and he gives them depth in a position that they were lacking. And so if that's the cost for a 7th round upgrade in 2025, I think it's worth the price. Another quick note, he was likely going to be waived. The Bears were shopping him heavily around the market. The Dolphins at 3-1 are in the 20s in the waiver wire. And so if another team wanted to claim him, he probably wasn't getting to the Dolphins. So he essentially had to jump the order to the front of the line of the waiver wire by trading this pick down the line.
Listen, the biggest indictment on Chase Claypool is Mike Tomlin. Mm-hmm. If Mike Tomlin can't handle you and wants to part ways with you, you've got to be pretty bad, because there are very few coaches, I think, in the NFL right now that can handle tough attitudes better than that guy, because he handled Roethlisberger, he handled Brown, and Le'Veon Bell all on one team.
Right.
And if you can handle Roethlisberger, you can pretty much handle anything. I know Brown and Le'Veon, maybe to a lesser extent, but Roethlisberger, I don't think people realize, was a major pain in the ass in that franchise a lot of times. And yet he handled all of that. So if he parted ways with Chase Claypool at such a young stage, that wasn't a good sign, because that's an organization that if they give up on you, bro, that's, how do you not want to be a part of the Pittsburgh Steelers? You know what I mean? Right. Like, that's a great freaking organization.
Right. Which is why I'm prefacing Dolphins fan and telling them, like, realistic expectations. I would have no expectations and be pleasantly surprised if he ends up contributing a few weeks down the line.
But let me add a little positivity to all this, to the nugget you just gave.
Right.
Okay. Maybe he's one of these petulant childs, because receivers are at times, that they want the ball and they want to be thrown, they want to be part of an offense. And he hasn't had that opportunity in Pittsburgh or in Chicago to be part of kind of an electrifying offense. You know what I mean? And so maybe that's why he went hug Tua. Maybe that's why it's like, now that he gets traded here, maybe he's part of something that he wants to be a part of now, because he wants the ball and he wants to be a part of this. So although he's going to still be 3rd or 4th in line because there's 2 big dogs in front of him, maybe there's a chance that he's part of an electrifying offense, and that, maybe that inspires him, in other words.
You never know what motivates dudes. Sometimes the sunshine just motivates dudes. The reality is, late in the year, not too fun, quote unquote, weather-wise. I'm a Florida guy, so criticize me, North weather folks, but not too fun to play outside in Pittsburgh and Chicago compared to November and December. Maybe that just makes your mood a little better. I tell you what, in November and December on the sidelines, I feel like I'm a lot happier when I am home in Miami than when they send me up north. And so that is why I am hopeful the Dolphins continue to get back on track offensively, because that would mean that I am at home a lot where it is warm and I am happy.
And let's be honest, folks, let's also shed light on what the reality is going to happen here.
Yeah.
If Chase Claypool kicks ass, he's basically doing it for another team because they're not going to pay him here because they can't.
We got no more room for wide receiver salary. So there's and this is the final year of Claypool's contract, and so there's some urgency here for him to remarket himself, because I tell you what, if he was in a free agency market right now, he'd be trying to get minimum contracts. That's
exactly.
So maybe you have a boost here, and maybe those numbers go up. Maybe you're a $5, $6, $7, $8 million dude just based off what you do over the last 10, 11, 12 games in Miami. So I think that this is it's definitely a chance for a win-win, but it's definitely low risk situation for Miami, and they can cut bait at any time.
And he could play well enough that teams still say, he was in that environment, I'm still not taking a chance. And then here comes Chris Grier with a special 2-year special and says, here's a 2-year contract, kid. Some incentives, at least you'll get it, you have a chance. And he'll get him cheap for a couple of years so he can reprove himself or something. That could also happen at the end of the year because, Farmer Grier just, kind of unearths these kind of things,
right,
with the 2-year contract. So you never know. All right, what do you got? What you got him pick? You're picking them against the Giants, right?
No, I'm picking the Giants. I'm just kidding, man. I thought it was funny, and I understand why he did it. Mike McDaniel had a rant this week about the get right game and how if you think about this as a get right game, you're gonna get got. These are great things to tell your team, Mike McDaniel. This is a get right game. The Dolphins can get a chance to get right on defense because that's rightfully the attention for this week after they gave up 48 to the Bills and looked pretty rough. The Giants gave up 11 sacks last week. If the Giants don't get the Dolphins pass rush going, the Dolphins pass rush is not going to get going, period. And so this feels like a game where they come back and put a smacking on the Giants if they come out with the effort they did. If they did early in the season, they should. A lot of dudes get big numbers, and everything is always good. These next 2 weeks, honestly, Giants and the Panthers, both of those teams are among the worst in the league as far as point differential, as far as record. And so these are definitely games for the Dolphins defense in particular, but also the offense to get right. I did think it's interesting, and it sets up not to jump steps. I know coaches hate to jump steps, but these 2 games should be pencil wins. If the Dolphins lose either of these 2 games, they should be very much disappointed, shame, whatever word you want to use. But as you look ahead to the Philly game in 2 weeks, that's our next big test, assuming all goes well in this. They'll be double-digit favorites in both of these games. It was interesting to note they ended up piping in noise in practice this week. And I think that is interesting because you heard Tyreek Hill, if you listen to his podcast, said that he felt the Buffalo Bills crowd significantly impacted their communication. He said, I couldn't hear Tua and affect the motion. He's like, the motion where I time everything perfectly. I couldn't time it because their crowd was so great, which I know Dolphins fans don't want to hear that the Bills crowd is great, but it's more of a game plan thing because Philly has a great crowd. I'll tell you what, and they're playing on Sunday Night Football. If that's the one element, and Tyreek again said this week, the only thing that can slow us down is us offensively. If that is the element that can give the Dolphins offense trouble, the fact of communication, lack of communication, and crowd noise is not a factor. That's something they need to work on, and it sounds like they're already attacking that. So that's something I got in the back of my mind for 2 weeks down the line.
Yeah, that crowd noise must have really hurt them in giving up on the run.
I'm not saying it's the excuse. There is more issues than the crowd noise.
Not bracketing Tyreek, not moving X over with. Not bracketing Diggs, not moving X over to Diggs. That crowd noise must have really affected so many things with the Miami Dolphins, and to me, the Buffalo game is what shows me that while I love McDaniel, still maybe not ready for those kind of moments because you had the pre-snap penalties. You saw McDermott absolutely stifle his offense, and he did not have an answer for it inside the game. Mm-hmm. He did not have a counter to what McDermott was doing, and that's what happened to him last year when with the Chargers. And that's the kind of stuff that for a young coach, he has to do a lot better. He has to be able to counter right away. And so those kind of things, and that to me is where my criticism is, that they're not ready yet for these kind of moments. They're much improved.
I think that's premature to say. It's one game. They failed their first test, but I think it's premature to say they aren't ready as a team at this stage. I think that we're still learning about this team. They went on the road their first 2 games against the Chargers and the Patriots, 2 teams that, say what you want. Patriots may not be a contender, but the Chargers are traditionally a playoff contender.
And they played like shit.
And they won both of them. But they won both of those games. They won both of those games and then put 70 up on the Broncos. It's a what have you done for me lately league. And they played poorly in Buffalo. But to say they're not ready for these big games as a whole, I think that's a big jump at this point. I think they just failed their first test. That's all. Their first test against a top 5 team this year, the Bills are a top 5 team. They failed their test. They get another test against a top 5 team in Philly in 2 weeks, and we'll see how they do.
Well, but that's why I'm saying that they've never done this. This franchise, in decades, hasn't been able to do this. So my point is, they're still not ready for it. They have not. They have yet to cross.
It's fair to say they've yet to prove they're ready, but to say definitively they won't be ready this year, I think it's.
No, I didn't say they won't be ready. I'm just saying they're not ready right now. They're just not. Neither is the coach. Right now, they're not ready, and this is maybe the more and more you play these kind of games, you get better in these moments. Right. But for the time being, the coach is 1-3 against his most important foe. And that's got to change. And so you got Philly, you got KC, you got Buffalo again. You need to win 2 of those 3 games to start to make me feel a little bit better about the playoffs. If you can only win once against Buffalo twice, Kansas City and Philadelphia, or 0.
You probably include Dallas in that mix too. But yeah, I'd say that group.
God, I just have a hard. What does Dallas win?
I'm with you. But if we're talking, I guess I wouldn't consider Dallas a top 5 team, but I consider them top 10 team.
Their talent.
Talent is top 10. Correct.
Yeah, they're not their production. It's
correct.
But
let's do this. And I know you got to go for another segment, but the top 4 teams in each conference, excluding the Dolphins, exclude the Dolphins fans, just to give you what we consider maybe the top 8 outside of it. In the AFC, you got the Chiefs, the Bills, the Ravens. I know you hate Lamar, but the Ravens are in that bunch.
I don't hate Lamar. It's impossible to hate Lamar. I just don't think he's a pure passer. That's it. It's pretty simple. I don't think he'll ever be a pure passer. And by the way, he's still struggling with the pass.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So the Chiefs, the Bills, the Ravens, and then that 4th is really up for grabs. It used to be the Bengals. And maybe it's too early to take them out, but they're struggling early in the season. The Browns are playing better than them right now. I don't know if there's a clear 4th. The Dolphins would probably be the 4th in that boat if we included them. And then the NFC, we would say the Eagles, the 49ers, then probably the Lions and the Cowboys are probably the top 4 over there, I would say. Yeah. So to me, that's the Cowboys are in your top 8. And to me, those are teams you measure yourself in because those are, quote unquote, if all goes right, the final 8. Based on what we've seen so far.
Bro, your disrespect of Baker Mayfield is just out of control, bro.
I'm
3-1, and you just
I'm not considering Tampa one of the top 4 teams. I don't care what the record is. I'm sorry.
Cameron Wolfe, catch his work there at the NFL Network. Cam, enjoy the weekend, my friend. We will catch up next week.
Appreciate you.
Thank you, sir. There you go. We unleash the Wolf Pack.
This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.